So, we thought that we'd like to sort of finish today with the vision of the future. And the way that we wanted to do that was to get Jan to be interviewed with piercing questions. So we thought, well, who can we get to interview him? So we thought of Graham Norton, too expensive, Alan Carr, too camp, Jonathan Ross, too much of a wanker, but we found the ideal person, Liz Terry. Liz Terry is the CEO of Leisure Media, so we should say Liz Terry MBE is the CEO of Leisure Media, and we should have we put the slide up just to show Leisure Media. I think most of you will be familiar with it. It's designed to give us insights and analysis of the marketplace for the movers and shakers of the industry. So, would you please put your hands together and welcome Liz Terry.
We have a bit of time now to have a fireside chat with Jan. And what I want to do is make this very interactive so that you have the opportunity to put your questions to him. Your questions are far more important than my questions. So if you can get your pens and pads ready and start to think about what you would like to ask Jan about. I don't think any questions are off limits. He's very happy to talk to you about anything that you want to ask him. I'm just going to set the scene by asking a few background questions just to get the conversation flowing. Then we will stop, turn the lights up and get the roving mics going around the audience so that you can ask him your questions. Once we've done that, from there on in, the discussion will all be based around the things that you want to know about, basically. So it's an enormous privilege to be here, to be able to talk to Jan, who has basically brought us all here. You know, if he hadn't had the vision to start Energy, none of this would have happened, which is pretty extraordinary if you think about it. My first question is really just to look at the future, because we're at a time of change in the business, and it's an exciting time, and really just trying to get a few insights into where Jan thinks all of this is headed. So.
Thanks, Liz. And firstly, I'd like to thank you, Liz, for doing this. I've been a great admirer of Liz's work to create the biggest publishing company that our industry has ever seen, and it has become the voice of our sector. Can I just ask you to thank Liz for her time today? This is something I've had to give a lot of thought to lately, because as we move now to a different structure, with Neil taking over the day-to-day operations, and me being able to go back kind of to the watchtower, you know, where I can start to, I think it was Joe earlier that talked about the telescope, that maybe I've got to get the telescope back out and start looking at what our medium term and what our long term looks like. It has felt quite lately, in the last few years, like I've had to be looking down, eyes down all the time, and very little looking up. But over the last 12 months, with the new brand, with the big conversation that you all contributed to, I've really been able to start raising my gaze. And I suddenly came to the realisation I can't do both. I can't run the day-to-day operation and be looking out for where we should be going in the future. Where are our new frontiers? Where are our new opportunities? So what is that vision? Well, we think it's international. So we've played with international up till now. Jim, who you just heard from, has done a fabulous job for us over the last decade in giving us strong outposts in Ireland, in Scotland, which we think of as international, as that's structured through a master franchise, and through Poland and now Latvia. But there are so many other countries to do, and Jim will be leading that march. But also new products. The yard is going to be a big part of our future, and we see the yard not only as a product for inside our clubs, there are 17 of them now inside many of your clubs, but also as a standalone product. And I also see us creating new experiences within our clubs. So what will that mean? Well, for 2023, the vision is to take 100 clubs to 500 clubs. That's clubs and yards. To take what is now 140,000 members to 500,000 members. And what is a 30 million network turnover to 100 million network turnover. That would make us a global player in every sense of the word.
It would be a good time to talk about the rebrand. because that's a big decision to do that. So, you know, could you just give the thinking, the background to that, and explain to everybody where you're going with it?
Absolutely. It's interesting, I get asked this one a lot. Why Fit for Less was so successful? Because we've talked a lot, and you've reported a lot, that Fit for Less has been a bit of a game changer for us. In 2009, when we moved into our Fit for Less budget revolution, it changed the nature of the business, and it was a great success for us. So why something's been greatly successful, would you kill it? Well, the answer is the industry's changed, the sector has changed. What the big conversation, the consultation process we went through with you, what that told us is that it was no longer fit for purpose, it was not doing its job as a brand. I think it didn't help that we were the only for less, and then suddenly we had exercise for less, gym for less, fit you for less. I think there were 14 for lesses at one point, and it became white noise. And we suddenly realised we're actually sitting on a really great brand that we're just not leveraging. And so bringing all of the conversation, all of the communication under one great brand suddenly made sense. It made sense that we only had to then communicate one thing: energy fitness, where you belong. Now it's tricky that, because we also at the same time created the yard. You said to me earlier, so you've gone from 2 brands to 1 brand, back to 2 brands. And that's true. But it all sits underneath that energy fitness family, that energy fitness where you belong umbrella. The yard is created as a product to differentiate. But the energy fitness brand, 26 clubs now in London alone, I think we've got 7 in the city of Dublin. It's starting to become a prolific brand, and building upon that is what's important. So the rebrand exercise, we're 70% through now. I know that Neil has plans to get the rest of the clubs through by the end of the calendar year. And having one brand with one message, I think, is what's going to make us a household brand.
We've talked at length about this whole issue of being a household name and how powerful that is, you know, if you have national consumer recognition. And some fitness brands have achieved that. So could you talk a little bit more about how energy is going to be developing itself more as a household brand? And you know, that's going to benefit every single person in this room.
Absolutely. The great aspiration is to be able to leverage the size and scale of the brand. And we have a system of a marketing levy which we utilise in order to try to put ourselves on the map. It was much easier in Ireland. In Ireland, interestingly enough, we have TV advertised, so we've been able to get onto national TV. That's much more expensive to do in the UK, but we have aspirations, much like Pure Gym advised to do, to actually see that, not too far away. TV advertising campaigns is a very real possibility for us. But actually, I think that the brand recognition is going to come from the hard work, the grind that you guys do on the ground. The fact that our clubs are smaller, more compact, more convenient, they're in communities that we serve, and that they're run and owned by passionate operators that put in their own money to make this happen. I think that there are local stories which are dramatically inspiring. I know of some of the people in this room who've had their own real moments in terms of breakthroughs. And I think it's about telling our story, and I don't think we've done it well, Liz. I'll be honest, I think we've been the best kept secret in the industry, and I think as we grow, we need to start shouting, guys. We need to start shouting from the rooftops what an amazing thing it is that you do every day in your clubs.
So let's stop there because we don't have that much time. Can we get the lights up, and could you start just putting your hands up if you want to ask a question? The guys will come around with the roving mics, and then we can start to gather your thoughts about what you'd like to ask Jan. Woo, thank you. Start at the back.
Hi Jane, can you tell us a bit more about...
Could you wait till you've got the mic? Okay. Can we turn the mic up a bit? Hold it closer to your lips.
Is that better?
Go.
No, you work with what I've been doing. Jan, can you tell us a bit more about the proposed flotation and how that's going to affect the network and the franchising?
So post-flotation,
Well, tell us a bit more about the proposed flotation and how it would affect the franchise network.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, one at the back.
In all your years in fitness industry, who is the person you hated the most when you met them?
Who was the person you hated the most when you first met them?
In all of you.
In all of your years in fitness?
We may or may not do that one. Further it's back here.
We're making it run.
You said obviously you want to grow to 500 clubs, and you mentioned the yard being a standalone product. How many of those sort of 500 clubs do you envision just being sort of a boutique studio, just like the yard?
Did you hear that? Okay, that's a good start. We'll come back and get more in a minute. Let's do those two first. Maybe not the hay one. He's got an angle on hay. So let's start with the question, the first question in the corner.
I think it's greatly misunderstood that we're floating, because we're actually not. I think a couple of things have got confused. We did go to float in 2012, and we came to 48 hours before the bell, and then we pulled the float. You might remember the weekend. It was the weekend that Greece fell into the sea, and they couldn't elect a parliament. It was that Black Monday when the markets crashed. Well, we were all ready to float on the Tuesday. And we pulled that float at a cost of £400,000, and it was a painful experience. So we're not floating. I'm not entirely sure that the public markets is the right place for energy. It may be one day, but not for now. But I know what you're referring to. You're referring to the event. And the event, for those that are not aware, is Energy's 15 years old. It's privately held. It has 283 shareholders. I'm just one of those shareholders. I happen to be the largest shareholder, but I'm just the shareholder. And there are some large shareholders, and there's some small shareholders. Some of you in the room are shareholders, those that bought shares in the Crowdcube campaign. So of those 283 shareholders, you will want a return. My biggest shareholders came in 2003. They've been in 15 years. Bob Morton, a prolific small cap investor, is 83 years old this year. 15 years he's been waiting for me to give him his return. He's had a good return along the way, I will say, but we've not at any point given the opportunity to take a return on their investment. Martin Ashley, the other very large investor, has been in for 11 years. And I'm proud to say that my family have never taken anything out of the business either. So, we're going to do a private equity deal. What's going to happen is a private equity company is going to be offered the opportunity to become the new majority owners in Energy. It doesn't mean that I'm cashing out. The idea is that I'll keep shares in the business. I'll probably end up with a third of the shares that I have now or less. But what it does is it allows everybody that has shares to actually get a return on that investment. So for those that are shareholders, it actually means getting a good return on your money. For the rest of the network, it means a well-resourced business with more capital and more firepower in order to expand. And it means the credibility that comes with being a private equity-owned company. And also the insight that some very clever people from private equity could bring to our strategic direction.
And can you give us an update about where you are in that process at this point in time?
Absolutely. I'm pleased to say that we just last week appointed our what's called vendor due diligence providers. In fact, Adrian Balcom from A&M is in the room somewhere. Where are you, Adrian? I can see him over here. So Adrian here and his team are going to be lifting the drains in our business in the next 3 to 4 weeks. We're going to be doing all of the work that allows a private equity company to really understand the nature of our business. And so by the end of November, due diligence will have been completed. Our information memorandum, that's the booklet that tells potential new owners about the business, that will be out by Christmas. And then we aim to complete the deal by the middle of March. Any idea why the middle of March is the important period? Yeah, I went over to Brussels, some of you probably heard, on the way to drive the Nürburgring a couple of weeks ago. And I tried to sort out Brexit for you, but I failed miserably. So we still don't know what's going to happen after Brexit, so we thought getting out of the way before that might make sense.
Let's move to the next question. So, would you like to do hate next?
I can answer that one. It was an odd question, so I don't mind saying, but I can answer it. Actually, the person I most hated was myself. And I'll explain that. We had the budget idea way back when. Many of you don't know, but I spent some time with colleagues with Stelios of EasyJet fame back in 2002, way before this budget revolution started, and we looked at the budget segment, the idea of budget fitness, and we came to the conclusion it was a silly idea and it would never work in fitness. It worked for airlines, but probably not for fitness, and we shelved it. Oh, what a mistake that was. So we very nearly had budget much earlier than anybody else did. And when I look back at that time, I really was kicking myself. So it might not be the nature of the question you're asking, but I hated myself at that time.
I didn't hear that question that came from the corner. Could you have another go? Because I'm...
Can you hear me now?
Shout at me.
Hello. Wallop. Yeah, so basically the expansion plan going to 500 clubs. I know you mentioned the yard being a standalone product. Out of those 500 clubs, how many do you envision being a standalone boutique club?
Okay, very clear now, thank you. So, out of those 500 clubs, I believe, and I'm looking for John Jempson, he's in the room here. I believe I've got this right, there he is. I believe we've got 70. So in that plan, out of the 500, a very small number are currently in the plan, purely because we've not yet done the first standalone one. The capacity in the marketplace for the yard product as a standalone, we think is much bigger. But our business plan is based upon a small set, and then let's see where we go from there. So a lot more energy fitness clubs and a small number of yards to test the market space.
Now you've got the whole company sort of retrenched around these two brands, do you think that there might come a point in the future where you would re-expand it out and launch different properties? Because obviously some of the franchise businesses now are going into verticals and developing different brands for different disciplines of fitness. Can you see that coming down the track, sort of way down, when you've got all your funding sorted out?
That's a great question, Liz. Neil's shaking his head over that, but Neil's got a theory on us needing to get really good at doing one thing. So the first answer to that question is, we want to get what we do bang on right. At the same time, we do know that there was so much to be leveraged out of getting people active. I'll just give you one example. We're looking just recently at the whole idea of outdoor exercise, the whole way that outdoor exercise happens. And actually we think there's a whole marketplace there in the way in which we work with the outdoors. We've just been watching Rob Francis and Claire and Milton Keynes and what you guys do with the outdoors. It's absolutely astonishing how well you're getting people engaged. What we've seen from our good friend at Mike Rollison have seen here for Nordic Walking. The festival recently attracted 600 people to exercise outdoors. That's just one area where, is that space we should be in? I think there's going to be an interesting tension between Neil and I, probably with me looking for those new frontiers, and well, I'll let Neil talk about that.
Right, any more questions? One of the things that I'm very interested to hear from Dan is basically what advice he could give you that would help you be more successful and help you thrive. And I think for me that's one of the most important things to be discussed. So that's kind of my next question. If you were going to give the guys in this room and the women in this room, 3 top tips for how they can be more successful, what would they be?
Okay, so firstly, I'd say we've got some unique assets on our side that I think are underused. One of them is the power of an owner or ownership as a mentality. And I say 2 things there, because the fact that our clubs are locally owned by passionate people that have put up their own money to make this happen, that's powerful. Somebody said to me just recently, you know, if the person sat at the end of the bar is the owner and they're making sure that the pub runs right, that's often the pub you want to go to. The reality is the ownership model works. Now, for those of you that are actually hands-on franchisees, you work in your club, you run the spin classes, that makes sense, you kind of get that. But if you're a multi-site franchisee that also has 5 Subways, 2 Papa John's and 4 energy clubs, and you actually have managers, you might think, well, what's the relevance to me? But I think if you can instill in your managers ownership, an ownership mentality, owning the experience that the members get, that is what is going to differentiate us. So bringing through our credentials as locally owned is going to be a key. And that's not just the job of the owners, but it's every single person that works on the ground, making the fact it's locally owned count. That's first. Second one, consistency. Oh, this is a big drum that Neil likes to bang. The reality is we haven't been the most consistent brand. We haven't. If there's one thing that's made me question my operational skills, it's that we have never succeeded until recently in really nailing on a consistent brand experience. And it was Neil coming on board that actually started to get that traction happening. And I'm not going to give Neil all the credit, as he wouldn't give himself all the credit. Actually, it's all of you stepping up and raising your game so that we offer a consistent experience. We're only as strong as the member that walks into our club on the furthest away point, furthest away from us, on a day when the member of staff is in the worst mood. That's how we're measured, and that's got to become consistent. And the third is we've got to believe in ourselves. We've got to believe in ourselves. I hear so often, oh, but Pure Gym's opening next door, or oh, Fitness First are coming in, or Gym Group are coming in. And you're going to have to deal with a more competitive market. It's going to become more competitive. What we have to do is be better. What we have to do is deliver what we know we can deliver. And the mantra is simple. High quality facilities delivered with an astonishing world-class service at better value than anybody else can deliver it. And only a franchise can do that.
It's very inspiring, and the market is getting more competitive with new franchises coming in. So how do you see the future? You know, what's your real vision for the future, sort of 5 years, 10 years down the track? How can energy dominate in such a competitive market?
It's interesting, I didn't actually, I wish I had a crystal ball, but I know that my crystal ball gazing is not that good, because if you'd have asked me 10 years ago, would I see the American franchises coming into the UK market, I'd have said no. Why would they? We're just we're a little rock over in, well, not in Europe anymore, kind of just off Europe. Why would the Americans want to come over here? Oh, but do they? And they've seen it as a very lucrative market, and now we've got the Australian franchises coming in. So I see that continuing now. Now I've realised that actually we're a very lucrative franchising market. You're going to see more. You're going to see more franchises come in. I do find it astonishing they're all positioning themselves in the mid-market. I find that odd, because there's a very real opportunity in the budget space. Easy Gym are kind of threatening to go into that space, but maybe not moving at the velocity that they could have. So I see franchising being a big part of the future. I do think at one point, a journalist said to me 5 years ago, it really annoyed me. They said, oh, you're in franchising, the spivvy end of the sector. That really annoyed me. It was kind of this amateur, that you guys are just, a bunch of mom and pop shopkeepers. That really annoyed me. I think actually this came out the back of that conversation, because the reality is I don't want us to be thought of that way. This is a great way of doing business. Think of some of the biggest brands that you know, they're franchised. Hilton, franchised. McDonald's, franchised. KFC, franchised. These are all massive global brands, franchised. So I think franchising is going to be a big part of the future, not just in the UK, but globally. This boutique phenomenon, it's so easy to think it's a fad, but they thought fitness was a fad, and that was in 1973. So the reality is, when Jane Fonda released the first fitness video, everybody thought that it would be a flash in the pan. It's an entire sector now. I actually think the boutique space is here to stay. I don't think it's found its way yet there are going to be some failures. There are going to be some casualties, I think, in that market. But it is interesting how's this for bizarre? So we are in a sector where, because fitness was really expensive, it became really popular to get fitness really cheaply. And so because fitness was cheaper, people could then, on top of their fitness membership, afford to go and pay £20 to go spinning. So suddenly, somebody chooses the health club membership for the cost effectiveness, but then doesn't mind using the money they saved to go and pay for a very high-end spin class. It's odd. What I'd say is I think members are becoming more promiscuous. You know, that's probably the way to think about it. I'm not entirely sure the idea of each human having one membership and that's it is going to be the way in the future. I think people are going to shop around. I think people are going to have, they're going to have a menu of things that they want to do. And we're going to need to be ready to move on that. If we're going to make energy a place where you belong, we're going to have to think about whole different ways of doing it. And thirdly, I actually think the outdoors is going to be huge. I think the idea that you don't necessarily need a building. I think the idea that you don't need a building to actually get fit, we need to embrace that. So they're the three areas that I think are going to be very, very important in the future.
You can always tell when you're being served by a business where people really care, and where they're passionate, and where they feel that ownership. And I think all the best leisure experiences tend to come from owned, operated businesses. So I'm a huge fan of what all of you do. I think it's a wonderful thing. There's nothing like corporate indifference to make you feel just not loved, not cared for, and not really want to go back somewhere, you know, however amazing it is. If there's no warmth to it, then it's a real turn-off. Joe Fairley was talking about the wellness and spa and mindfulness markets, and they're relatively easy to integrate into fitness businesses. And what's your advice to people here who might want to get a little bit into wellness? Sorry to jump that one on you.
It's interesting, Jim Jory this morning, who was on last, said to me, I believe he's got a colleague with him that's been talking about mindfulness. You know, mental health is a massive issue right now, and it's not just all about how fit or how strong we become. We have a very small number of clubs that do more in that area. The Liston Park, for example, owned by Chris Jurek, is a very different product than everything else that we do. I think it's an area that's going to have relevance to us in the future. I'm not entirely sure how we embrace it. I have to get past Neil King in terms of making sure we do one thing right first. But the reality is, you are absolutely right, Liz. It's an area that's easy to integrate. I think that it's also very relevant to locally owned businesses. It's something that would be easy to do as a franchise. And I think that there are ways of doing it other than the obvious. So, for example, starting a day spa business, or to create a country retreat. There's also ways in which we can look at our customer base and how can we get involved. Some of you may remember early days of Empower when we introduced the Mindset program. Yeah, I've got some nods. Okay, so some of you remember we used to do seminars where we looked at people's mindset as part of the success factor that would get you to an end result. So nutrition, fitness and mindset. I don't think that's changed. I just think we've not given enough concentration to it. So one to think about.
Definitely. Do you share best practice across the network of energy clubs? So, you know, if somebody was doing a really good mindfulness class or meditation or something, relaxation class, would that knowledge be shared across the network? And is that something that you could potentially formalise a bit more?
I would say we've not been good at this, Liz. I'm going to be candid and honest here. I see some astonishing things going on around the network, some amazingly good things. And I don't think we take enough opportunity to share good practice. Just recently, the introduction of Spotlight on a Friday, which I know has reached wide acclaim, I think is the beginning of starting to do that better. But I think it is something we need to improve. I'm getting a signal on timing here.
I guess I've just got one more question, and that is about mental health. There's a whole trend now towards businesses having mental health first aiders, which is a new role. I only found out about fairly recently. What role do you think energy can play in helping people with this mental health crisis?
it's interesting because I don't think we realise how many people suffer from mental health issues, and that they're all around us. You know, I've just recently discovered that a friend that I'm very, very close to is having a real problem with depression. So I didn't even know. I wouldn't have known, and it's all around us. And I think if you're in the game we're in, you know, we're into fitness, health, and wellness. How can we not be interested in that? Now, mental health first aiders, I'm not entirely sure I've worked out how that works, but what I do believe in is mental health being as important as physical health, and I think it's something that we need to focus on.
Any more questions before we wrap up? Okay. Thank you very much, Jan, and thank you everyone for joining in.
Thank you, Liz. I'm going to, as I know we're tight for time because of the turnover for this evening, I'm going to just ask you to join me in thanking Liz for joining us today, and also, they were piercing questions, so thank you, Liz. I really appreciate it. Okay, we're going